The Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria have called on the federal government to reconsider the Expatriate Employment Levy. According to LCCI, the Expatriate Employment Levy launched by the federal government is harmful to the country's drive for foreign direct investments. Also, Chinyere Amona, the Chamber's Director General, spoke in a statement titled, I quote, LCCI Perspective on Nigeria's Expatriate Employment Levy. She expressed concern about the likely perception by foreign investors that the Nigerian government is not accommodative to foreign workers. She further warned that such perception will harm the country's drive for FDI, calling for a balanced approach to expatriate employment. Joining us now is Gabriel Idahosa, President and Chairman of Council, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Idahosa, thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Mr. Idahosa, well, we have had organized private sector, SCCI, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, saying this expatriate levy that has been jacked up would discourage foreign direct investment. Okay? Now they've raised it from $2,000 to $10,000 for staff, $15,000 for directors. Was there any prior consultation with organized private sector before this was done? And why do you think that, the OPS in Nigeria is defending the interests of expatriates when you could just say, well, these expatriates, when they come and invest here, they will be competing with us in certain sectors. Why don't you just protect your own interests and allow government to generate revenue? Because it looks like that's the explanation from the government side, that they need to generate revenue, since revenue is Nigeria's problem.
Well, we have to look at the big picture. The government already charges $2,000 as a fee for service for issuing the annual card, SEPAC or green card, what is known generally as a green card, a residence card. That is a fee for service, which the government already charges. The new one is not an increase. It's totally unrelated to that. It is a levy for the fact that you are a foreign person working in Nigeria. It's nothing to do with processing your card that entitles you to work in Nigeria. For you to work in Nigeria, first you have to get an expatriate quota. Your employer has to pay for an expatriate quota. And then you get what is called an STR, a special visa subject to regularization to come to Nigeria. The employer pays for that. When you arrive in Nigeria, every year your employer pays $2,000 for services rendered to the company and the employee. This levy has nothing to do with any service rendered to either the employer or the employee. It's a levy that says because you are a foreign person working in Nigeria, you are paying this levy. That is the first part of it. The second and most important part of it is our national interests. The president and a lot of governors and even private sector groups like us go out of this country to promote investment, for people to come and invest. When they invest, they expect to protect their investment by having some of their top people here as directors, as technical people to manage that investment. These people are part of the cost of that project. And if you want to make the investment attractive, you have to ensure that the cost of bringing those expatriates is affordable all the time. Now, $10,000 per employee, $15,000 for the director, that is 15 million naira at 1,500 to 1, and 22.5 million for the director. Now, a large company, let's say a large construction, a rail construction company, has 20, 30 expatriates. So you look at the numbers. We have a company that has 600 workers. Only 7 of them are expatriates. Now, these kind of people have invested hundreds of millions of naira to be in Nigeria. And we are saying that in addition to paying all those costs of bringing the 7 employees already in Nigeria and paying $2,000 every year, they should now pay an additional $10,000 or $15,000. The other part of it is that we are competing with all other countries. And in international relations, there is reciprocity. So, which says, whatever you do to my people in your country, we will do to your people in my country. So other countries can now say, well, Nigerians who are working in our country, we will also pay $10,000 and $15,000 for the directors. And that immediately speaks to the drop, the very significant drop you will immediately see in home remittances. From the 25 billion we are getting now, you can just imagine what happens to it. It also means the maintenance of Nigerians who are dependent on Nigerians working abroad, who will either lose their jobs because their employers now have to pay $10,000, or we have their salaries reduced because the employer is not going to carry that loss of our Nigerians who are working abroad. So there are various dimensions to this matter that we are looking at. In all the road shows in the last 9 months, the president and private sector interest groups and governors have been going out to promote investment. None of those investors know or expect that when they come to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in Nigeria to build a gas processing plant, and they need to bring, let's say, 5, 10, 20 employees. None of them have been told that those employees, they are going to be paying $10,000. And these are very important factors in decision making. Since the announcement, a couple of investors we know because they are members, have put a hold on various projects that are in the pipeline, that we have to see whether we can actually do business in Nigeria going forward. So that is the picture that we have right now.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Idahosa. I'd like to just ask, about some of the things raised by Dr. Almon and some of the things you've also talked about. I hear you very clearly, especially when you talk about the principle of reciprocity. You look at attracting foreign, the confidence of investors. But how about the concerns by the government and what they hope to address by instituting this policy? One is to encourage the employment of more Nigerians, as opposed to what we sometimes currently have, where jobs that can easily be done by Nigerians are taken up by expatriates. Number 2 is to address the wage gaps in some instances. We've heard, complaints, we've seen, feedback from Nigerian workers who are unfairly treated in comparison with their expatriate colleagues. And perhaps this is a move by the government to ensure that it protects the interests of Nigerians, because at the end of the day, it's Nigeria first. I know we are looking for foreign investment. Do you think this is solid enough as a rationale for this policy? And if it is, or if it's not, should it be more a modification of the policy as opposed to maybe doing away with the policy or the amount of money imposed on employers?
Well, you have to look at what you want to achieve. If you want to achieve protection of Nigerian workers across the world, there are various labor laws and regulations that are continuously adjusted. And these are not new. There are some African countries that have done several things to address it. Within the labor law system, you can actually regulate any such gaps. It is clear that that is a different matter of how you protect your workers. What you charge an expatriate as a levy has nothing to do with the laws that protect your workers. The industrial laws that ensures that workers are protected, that the wage gaps are not there. There are laws that can deal with that. Certainly, it has nothing to do with what you charge this person. And in any case, to get one expatriates into this country, it will cost you anything between 30 to 50 million naira. So it is not fun for the expatriates to be employed by these companies. We don't see the other side when we have expatriates. So there are specific solutions to specific issues. the issue of protection of Nigerian workers against exploitation by foreign employers, even domestic employers. There are laws there. The question is how effectively do we implement them? Because as we know, there are laws in this country that are there to achieve certain purposes, but they are not implemented. So the workers don't suffer only from foreign-owned businesses. Sure. Our own Nigerian-owned businesses also have the ways they treat workers, which is not right. And there are laws that can deal with that. It's really nothing to do with this kind of levy to keep foreign employers out of the country. It's a matter of the laws that are meant to apply for that specific purpose of the welfare of workers across the board, whether their employers are foreign or local.
Okay, sir. So, I'd like to ask two questions. At first, do you think we have a problem with our expatriate quota, which a lot of people have touted as being the problem? Secondly, do you think we also have a level of abuse and frivolity as regards even the expatriate that comes in? Thirdly, do you even think that these payments are being followed through and properly implemented in the first place, where we have also a high level of corruption? Because I've heard stories of people evading payment like this. So it depends on who you know in the Nigerian system.
Well, you're addressing the real issues here. Those are the real issues. So whether it is expatriate quota, whether it's the rights of workers, there are laws. There are laws that are very strict as to which employer, a foreign employee you can employ, how many years is to be here to train in Nigeria.
So do you think these companies are abusing the expatriate quota?
So the abuse is you cannot say the company is abusing the quota.
Or the investors.
The system.
Is abusing the expatriate quota.
The system.
Allows the abuse.
The system is responsible because it's for me as a person in government, as a staff in government, to ensure that these laws are followed. So it is the system. You know, the laws are there, as you're right, are they followed? You can do a very empirical investigation. You find, yes, expatriate quota is abused because people have to have, for example, if you have to come in as an engineer, you must have certain qualifications and experience in your country before you come. And then you check and see whether this person actually has it.
But most of them don't have. Most of them are
precisely
draftsmen in their countries.
So these levies have nothing to do with that. It is the system that ensures that the laws of Nigeria are followed by the implementers of that law at the bureaucracy. So that is nothing to do with levy. And whether you put $100,000 levy, you will still get back to the issue of the system. Whether it is paid, whether, as you have said, the funds are properly used, and whether the right correct payments are made, and those payments go into the government treasury.
So should we fix the system rather than increasing this levy?
Well, it's a general government situation. It's fixing systems rather than making laws that are self-destructive, because this is a proposed measure that certainly will reduce foreign direct investment in a very significant manner, without addressing the key questions you have asked about how efficient and corruption-free can we make the system.
Mr. Idahosa, so what next? Because I asked earlier on, I said, was organized private sector consulted? Obviously, I can deduce from what you said that the government did not consult. And now you have put out a statement. MAN has also done the same thing. Have you received any feedback from the federal government in any way? And two, are you likely to go to court? Because Section 59 of the Constitution is very clear. You can't impose a levy or a tax without legislation by the National Assembly. Obviously, this particular expatriate levy just came out from the blues without any law to back it up. Will SCCI, in collaboration with MAN and maybe other bodies like NECA, decide to go to court to challenge this expatriate levy?
Well, First thing is, yes, a lot of conversations are going on as we speak. A lot of conversations between the private sector and the government are going on. A lot of conversation by the foreign missions in Nigeria, who have very important stakes in this country, and they believe that Nigeria's economy and their own economy have a lot to gain if it is resolved in an amicable manner. There's the other dimension of AFCFTA. The African missions in Nigeria are also in the conversation that you don't want to do this to fellow African countries. So the LCCI statement speaks to, first, whether we want to do it at all, a whole range of modifications that need to be done if we are going to accept that principle at all. Which industries, which countries, is a blanket application of this kind of levy will be very destructive. The conversations are going on every day. Yesterday, today, tomorrow, there are conversations going on. It is very unlikely that this will end in litigation. The reason being that there's a wide range of interest groups, both local and international, that are having these conversations. And the idea is that, look, let us look at the foreseeable implications that are staring us in the face. We don't want to put millions of Nigerians working abroad in real jeopardy. We don't want to do that. Serious jeopardy. So it is likely that these conversations will lead to a resolution that will address most of the concerns that have been raised. We are not likely to go to court because this is more a question of the national interests of all Nigerians, nothing to do with just the business sector. We are talking of millions of families who are dependent on Nigerians abroad, who will be directly affected. Once countries around the world start saying, okay, Nigeria, you do it to our people, we are going to do it to you.
Right. I'd like you to speak to a wider concern that this introduction of EAL raises. And I'm still trying to focus on, Rufai had talked about expatriate quota, and then this penchant for expatriates to handle jobs that Nigerians can easily take on. I'm not saying no to expatriates because, like you mentioned, everywhere in the world you would have, the world is a global village. But where we have skills that are not developed, especially from the Nigerian labor force, to be able to take on these roles, how do we begin to address those concerns? Because the reason why a company is in it for profit, and they want to hire the best hands, the best minds to ensure that they're able to maximize profit ultimately. And sometimes the concern is that we don't have those, we can't find those skills locally. How do we improve that? Because that is a big, if we say they should all go and then we can't find the skills necessary, how do we address that? I believe that's a bigger conversation that we must begin to have. How do we upskill our own people to be able to take on these roles that expatriates fill currently?
So there are two parallel solutions to your question. Yeah. One part is look into how thorough our system of expatriate quota processing is done, how thorough it to avoid abuse. There's a whole big issue of the magnitude of abuse, which is an internal government bureaucracy issue that has to be addressed to reduce that abuse so that you don't have this kind of people who really have no business being in Nigeria. There is the other part of your question about investments in education at all levels, high-level leadership education, technical and vocational education. Because a lot of these people come with skills that we can easily acquire here if we invest in technical and vocational education. But we don't do that enough. And the countries around the world have invested heavily in creating a pipeline of highly skilled people all the time, so they can afford to export. Cuba, for example, is known as a major exporter of doctors. Yeah. It's an industry in Cuba to produce doctors and healthcare professionals far above their internal needs. It's an industry that is invested heavily in. So your question speaks to that. Whether as a country, we have prioritized education generally and education for specific development goals. If you want to grow a technical base in a country and you are not investing heavily in technical skills, you will always have to import people, up to carpenters and plumbers and everybody.
Well, Mr. Idahosa, somebody sent a message saying Nigerian expatriates in the UK, they are also levied more or less. They pay like 40% tax, and they are also income tax in the UK, and also back here in Nigeria. So it's not as if when we defend national interest, there are no countries where Nigerians are facing the kind of situation.
Yes, I can answer that.
Okay, very briefly, because you have to go.
In those countries, the taxes are related to your income. So the income levels in the UK, you can pay taxes up to 80-70% of what is your income. It is not that because you are working in the UK, somebody imposes a levy on you. But because you are earning, if your income is £30,000 in the UK, you pay tax that is relevant to that.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Idahosa, President of the Lagos Chamber for Commerce and Industry. Thank you for joining us.